You are listening to an MLGA Network podcast. Welcome to Voluntary Vixens, where Jesse and Maddie give a female voice to news and pop culture with a libertarian twist. Join us to stay informed and challenged while keeping it sane, peaceful, and most importantly, voluntary.
Hi.
Hello. This is Voluntary Vixens, and this is our first episode, and this is our intro episode, so we're just going to talk about three things today. First, we're going to talk about why we podcast. Oh, you know what? Let's introduce ourselves. My name is Jessie, and this is...
My name's Maddie.
So, why do a podcast? I think we first talked about why we want to do a podcast is because we're both women. And of course, as most people who are in the liberty movement know, it's a sausage party. So it's nice to have a couple women around and giving their perspective on the liberty movement every once in a while. So that's why we're doing a podcast.
I would agree with that. As much as, I love a good sausage party from time to time, you do need that, the balance. I think, men and women evolve together. We should be in these movements together. And I think just because that it seems on the outer appearance maybe that there aren't any female libertarians, that there aren't any women in this liberty movement, I think that's one, inaccurate. And then two, okay, so maybe it's a perception that we should work on fixing. And I think it's definitely gotten better. And, I know I've found a lot of female camaraderie in here. And so, okay, maybe I've had to find all these friends of mine on the internet because maybe we are that few and far between. So, for context, anybody listening, Jesse and I have never met in person. But you know what? Here we are. Gotta love technology.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, what we feel like we're bringing to the table here.
Yeah, I think the big thing that we want to accomplish with the podcast too is not just to bring a female voice to the whole thing, but also to make aware to everyone that the philosophy of liberty, the philosophy of voluntarism is something that everybody can benefit from, not just being a white male, but women, minorities, anybody from any religion can adopt this philosophy and it doesn't interfere with your life. So it's something that I think more people are probably more voluntarism background than they realize. So we're just going to talk about that. That's what we want to do is, just highlight those issues and talk about it. And maybe people will realize that there's something good about it.
I would also say, why it might not sound as appealing to other people is because of a good deal of propaganda against us. The simplest, shortest, easy to understand point is that libertarianism in particular is, and voluntarism, they're philosophies of peace.
Yeah.
The whole idea behind them is that we're not to aggress upon otherwise peaceful people. So we're not for outward forms of violence against peaceful people. And, just basically following the golden rule, things we learn as children, things we do in our daily interrelationships with anybody you meet on the street, whether that you think they're a libertarian or whether you think they've voted for Donald Trump or whether you think they voted for Hillary Clinton. Chances are nobody would agree with who I voted for. So, but I can't live my life like that. And I don't think other people can too. And so if we can kind of use this as a place and a way to expand the ideas to other people and how it kind of starts from the individual, like that, it's literally like a ripple effect from there.
Yes,
so
I think that's the key. Is that it starts at the individual. It's a very individualistic movement because in order to every major group is made up of individuals. So everybody has to be aware of their own wants and desires. And if you want something good, you want peace, you want prosperity, you want family values, it starts with you. That's where it has to start. You cannot grab a whole bunch of different people from all kinds of different backgrounds and expect them all to adopt those philosophies without you as an individual being willing to adopt that yourself. So that's a big thing. And I think that women in general are not attracted so much to this movement, because when we think of individualism, I think we think selfish. We think, we're just being selfish. We're not taking care of others. And women are very much about how we relate to other people, more so than maybe men are. We're always thinking about, especially as a mom myself, I have to think about my kids. I have to think about my husband, and I'm a nurse, so I have to think about my patients. And I don't necessarily always take the time to think about myself. But I do know that if I want a better world, if I want my children to, to be not brats and to think about others themselves, I have to model that for them. So I have to adopt that viewpoint myself. So it's going to be really hard, I think, trying to get these concepts across, but it's really important, I think, because I think if we live in a world now where the mainstream media wants to tell us that there's so much going on that is bad, like we have mass shootings, quote unquote, we have, race problems in this country, but nobody wants to sit down and take the time to think on their own, well, what am I doing about these issues myself? So that's a big thing. It always starts with you, as an individual. That's the big key to the voluntary liberty movement.
The idea of it starting with the individual, or it being the responsibility, first and foremost, of the individual. God, that's scary. Like, how could anybody do it on their own? I know people like to say that I can do it on my own. Like, oh, and women these days, like, they're independent, and I'm a feminist, and I can do it on my own. I don't need men. I don't need anybody. I just got my girls. I got my good vibes, and it's like, great. Have those. You need those. Everybody needs a support system. But in order for that support system to be as good and as strong as one might want it to be, in order to do all the things that you think like that a government should do, it really has to start with strong, self-aware individuals. And okay, so that means none of us are perfect, right? Because I think it brings it back to realizing that everybody's human. We're all human, and I've got to work on forgiving myself for things all the time, but it's a constant battle, but I think it's the most worthwhile one that there is, and it's going to be the one that if you can face those demons every day of your own, like, you're going to be able to face those otherworldly demons, those things outside yourself, be able to help other people besides yourself. But if you don't have that, stuff on lockdown with your own self, like, you are going to be absolutely useless. And so that's why I don't think I, as a philosophical anarchist, anarchy without rulers, I don't think anybody else should be ruling over me, because I don't think I should be ruling over anybody else. So
right.
It's like, it sounds like a very scary concept, but it comes back to what I think is very basic ideas and very basic principles, and clean cut. It's efficient. So like, I'm absolutely the person of shortest distance between 2 points is a line. I will get there. I will find it. So it's not as scary as it seems.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. We have a lot of young people who are very open to the idea of socialism and communism. They view the individualistic idea as, you're only going to take care of yourself. It's not going to come back to where you're going to take care of those less fortunate. Who will do that job if we don't have government step in and do it for us? Because we're all selfish, right? So, but I think that there's a difference between selfishness and self-interest. You have to put your interests first. And if your interests are, and for some people it is, like, you want to take care of other people, but you want, like you say, you want to have a clean environment, that's self-interest because you live in that environment. So don't think about like what the air quality is supposed to be over India. Take care of your own community first. Maybe just even your own yard. Do you mow your own lawn? I mean, do you recycle? Do you do things on your own first? And I think that really isn't, I think a lot of people, when you put it to that perspective, I think a lot of people actually think that makes a lot of sense, and they probably do those things. So I think that maybe it's just a matter of how, you word those things to people who are more open to the socialism, communism idea. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to help out people, but the problem is, how do you go about doing that? Do you take money from people Do you take things from other people and then redistribute that? Because that's considered theft. So how do you get people to voluntarily give up their money to help the common good? You could do it by force, by having the government come in and kick the door down and make you do it. Or you could just, I don't know, learn how to be a good person and a nice person and convince people that maybe giving a percentage of their money to your cause would help other people. You know, that's hard for people, though, I think, is coming up with a way to convince people to give up their money or their time or their possessions. That takes more work than it does to just say, hey, Nancy Pelosi, why don't you write up a law that tells us how to tax more money from the government or from the people to give to the government for this, whatever. The main reason why we're doing it is just to maybe put a female perspective on, from our perspective on the liberty movement, and maybe how we can get the message across to more people, hopefully in a better way.
Yeah. I'll also say, I guess, and it kind of bridges some other things we wanted to talk about, like, so maybe how and why I got here myself. Here I am. I work a overly full-time job, but I love it. I love my job to death. Like, it is awesome. And I basically am queen boss at 2 companies. And so, and I'm in the STEM field. And nobody forced me to take any of these positions. Nobody forced me to go study biology. I studied biology because I wanted to. I was fascinated with the living world. Like, I don't understand how people aren't. But, to each their own. But so anyway, like, I pursued my own passion to want to do that, and was just very lucky to have stumbled into that. I could have definitely taken the easier route and maybe gone to be an English major. No offense, English majors. Still love you. But differences. God love it. You were able to go pick out your own major. But anyway, so, like, coming here and finding the liberty movement and finding, like, people like Mises. And so, honestly, I kind of stumbled into this through a weird interest in economics, which I never thought I was going to like. But, like, the idea of human action, that this is how, like, the world naturally kind of unfolds. And it just seemed to, it really hit home with me. Again, I mentioned, like, I like consistency. I like the path of least resistance. And so I think it all just ended up, the more I learned, the more I listened to, like, Tom Woods, bless his heart, he really got me. He really got me as far as I am. Him and Dave Smith, he kind of threw a lot of cold water in my face and made me realize any inconsistencies in my foreign policy views, because it really is about, how the world is supposed to naturally work itself out. And it does. And the free market, when it is actually the free market and unimpeded by state control and then, like, lobbyists and cronyism, the free market is literally, like, the natural world. And so it fit with me, and it makes sense, and kind of helped me stay sane. It helped me not pick sides. It helped me not freak out about what I'm sorry, but I consider minor issues versus, like, grand scale, how are we treating people, in other countries. Mm-hmm. So when I realized just how destructive our foreign policy is and has been for God knows how long, at least 100 years, thanks Woodrow Wilson, and I imagine it started before that, but I'm not the historian here. But kind of realizing that big picture stuff, it kind of fixed any outrage meters in me that might have been askew and worried about people's, think about things that people are complaining about this week. Who's releasing their tax information? Okay, I want to know about how many civilians died last week, in which foreign countries, how many, because we're in plenty of them. So, while obviously, like, those are very heavy subjects to have weighing down on me, I just think, like, being as aware as possible, getting that, what is it, the red pill? Yeah. Getting red pilled and seeing, honestly, the atrocities that our government does on a daily basis, and most of it without the public's knowledge. And then, like, the public that is aware of it is a kook or a crazy person like me. It's just, it's really disheartening sometimes, but I think it reminds me that my heart is in the right place, and I really do want what's best for everybody. And so, if I can just, like, get my intentions across as such, but also be able to share the ideas that have led me there, the people and their ideas and and like I said, it's very basic principles behind these. I want to save you all some trouble and some heartache and some mental stress because, Lord, there is enough that is just going to be going on in your own life that you're going to have to deal with. So basically, coming to this movement and coming to where I am and where I stand and how I deal with things on a day-to-day basis, it's like Harry Brown's How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it is up to you, and it's up to your own mental state of mind. So I am here to sort of share that because that's what I want other people to be, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more happy to go about their day and be nice to people and fix problems that are bigger than ourselves. But in order to do that, we have to like ourselves, and then we have to like each other.
Right. Well, I was going to ask, were you a Democrat, or were you leaning in that direction before, or were you a conservative, Republican? Or?
Well, so I've always been registered as an independent because there was something just like I did not, I made it out of the public school system not a Democrat, which is amazing because everything there is forcing you to be a Democrat, and Republicans are evil. But, like growing up, honestly, just there was nothing political going on in my household. Parents were not open about it. I mean, they didn't need to be. I don't know. It just wasn't at the forefront. But I registered as an independent because I liked that idea. I was like, no, I don't have a party. Neither of you just get me. I'm not joining either of your parties. Yeah. I'm still registered as an independent, which sucks because Maryland is a closed primary, but I would love to go in and sabotage either side and or promote the better primary candidate so that like the better voice ends up going to, against the other party's candidate.
Yeah.
But I can't do that here. So that is what it is. But I think like me sticking to my principles, I feel better about that than joining. But if I were to say I leaned any way, it would have been like I was more of a conservative because I really did believe in the fact that the idea that the government should be very, very small and do as little as possible. But then you kind of figure out, okay, well, what are the blind sides there, and where are they really actually for big government, and or when are they quiet about big government? And so I kind of just had to get out of that camp and realize that I was a libertarian. And then, for most people, the joke is that once you're a libertarian, it's about 6 months and then you're an ANCAP. So in my heart, I am an ANCAP. And for those listening who have no idea what an ANCAP is, I'm not saying anything with cat, anarcho-capitalist. And so capitalism being the purest form of free market, voluntary interactions. No, we do not live in a free market in the United States. We like to talk about it. Conservatives love to talk about it. And Democrats love to say that we're in it and it's evil, but that's just not the case. Anyway, that's another episode entirely. It goes back to the anarchy. I do not think we should be ruled by other humans because humans are inherently flawed. And that's just how it is. And we have our limitations, we have our flaws and imperfections, but we also have the capacity to do amazing things. And I think that is ignored a lot of the time. Again, we can only do those amazing things if we as individuals decide to do them individually and then together, because we're all on the same page at that point. But we're not forcing each other to adopt another person's ideas in mass. Like, that doesn't work. It's never worked without violence, and why on earth would we want to continue down roads of violence?
Right.
It's 2019!
Right.
Insert it's 2019 meme.
I'll kind of talk about how I got started. It's very kind of similar to you because I don't think I ever really was one way or the other. I remember in high school, I thought I was a Democrat in high school. I thought I was going to grow up and I was going to be a Democrat because I hated government, and I thought that I really hated people telling me what to do. I know that's a shocker to most people, but I did not like being told what to do. And I thought, I would look at other Democrats. I would watch what I saw on the news about the hippie movement and all that stuff. And I thought, yeah, I feel like that. Like, get rid of the government. Nobody tell me what to do. I'm going to be free. And then I started actually at the end, I think it was my senior year, my government teacher at a public school, by the way, she gave us all a test to fill out, and we answered all the questions. And I was, to my surprise, I thought I was a Democrat, or I at least was on the left side. Turned out I was actually conservative. So when I saw that, I was like, well, geez.
That's interesting. I
started to research more and more about what it meant to really be a conservative, what it meant to be a Republican. And I started thinking, get rid of welfare, check. Government limitation, check. But there were still some other things that bothered me, like, why are we so involved in other people's countries? I didn't like that so much. I grew up, my mom's best friend married a Lebanese man, and I was always friends with their family, and they live in Beirut still. So I kind of got an idea just from kind of over listening, at the dinner table, their issues, because as you can imagine, Lebanon is pretty much right there in the middle of all the conflict all the time between what's going on in Syria, and Jordan and Syria is right there next to Lebanon, and then they've got refugees from Palestine that come there too, and this was like in the 80s, I think I'm thinking of. But the little girl that I was friends with, her dad, he was he's an engineer, and he would, help rebuild the city every time something happened. So, there's always just wars going on over there. And I remember one that happened, like, what was it? In the early 2000s, they were just bombed. Hezbollah just bombed the crap out of Beirut, and they lost power. And when all of that was done, her dad was the one that helped rebuild the city. So I grew up very sympathetic, actually, to Muslims and to Arabs. So that kind of goes in direct conflict with the Republican viewpoint on foreign policy. It really I didn't have a conflict with that until recently, honestly, because, I'd studied a lot about Arabic people and their culture when I was in college. I actually learned how to write a little bit of Arabic. One of my professors had lived in Egypt. So I got a pretty good education from him about what it was like to, what Arab people are like. I got the opportunity in the early 2000s, actually in 2000, to go to the Middle East. That was a year before 9/11 happened. And I got to meet a lot of people there. And the truth is, Arab people are actually very nice. At least at that time they were. And they didn't hate Americans so much at that point, I don't think. They have a very good philosophy of they're going to view you as their friend first. When you come into their country, a lot of times you'll be asked to come to a person's house and have tea. If you refuse, that's very rude. So they're
noted. They
have a high, they love family. They have a high respect for that. If you when I actually went to Syria. So one of the things that I learned was that Syrian women, they want to know about your family. They want to know if you have any kids. They want to know about that, because to them that is so important. The way that they portray Arabs today is very different. There's some truth to it. I'm not going to lie. There is some truth to some of the sexism and some of the way that they treat Christians and homosexuals and
jinx.
Yeah. Yeah. There is some truth to that. But I think the key thing is that we've lost as Americans, we just have forgotten to first look at, and maybe this was never a concept that our government ever wanted us to know, but we have to look at these people as people first. And when you go to their country, you don't go in there wearing a tank top and tight shorts and, stiletto heels or anything. That's just common sense. You go in there and you respect their culture. You cover up, but they're going to treat you like you're their friend first. That is part of their culture. The Bedouin culture in general is like that. And they're all descendants of Bedouins. They all tell you that, especially in Syria and Jordan. They'll tell you they're all descendants of Bedouins, which I don't know if you know what a Bedouin is, but they're basically they're the tribal people that live in tents and they move around a lot. So that is that's a source of pride for them, actually. It's kind of like if you live in East Tennessee like I do, and you tell everybody that you're Cherokee. Everybody says they're Cherokee in East Tennessee, even though they're not. But that's like a source of pride to say you're like 1% Cherokee.
Even like 1,024th percent?
Yeah. Yeah.
Every bit counts, right?
Yeah. Drop of blood, buddy. But yeah, I think that I think my perspective, what made me go towards the libertarian movement was definitely Ron Paul ran for president the first time. That really got me. I thought he made a lot of, I was like, I've been thinking this for so long, just been keeping it to myself. He's talking about all this anti-war stuff. We shouldn't be going over there. And what are we doing? Why do we even over in Germany or Japan? We're not at war with these people. So why do we have a presence there? So I really thought that a lot of the stuff he talked about really made sense. And I try to be, I'm also in the STEM field. And before I was a nurse, I actually was a therapist. I worked with people who are mentally ill. So I was already trying to be analytical and a logical thinker in the first place. And everything he said made logical sense to me. It just did not make sense to keep going down the road that we were doing. And it was really frustrating to, see how the media just tried to tear him apart. But that was my first, I was in my early 20s. So, that was my first introduction, I think, to just how the media can really, they aren't concerned with the truth and getting that information out to you. I learned that during the Ron Paul stuff. But I also had been, another introduction that really solidified it for me is when I went to India for the first time. And I read, no, maybe it was the second time I went to India. I think it was the second time because I went with my mom. I brought a book along with me. It was Give Me a Break by John Stossel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And that pretty much right there, I would recommend that book to everybody. If you're a brand new libertarian, read that because he does a pretty good job of making it clear to you, like what the difference is and the difference between being a Republican or a Democrat and then what a libertarian thinks. And he talks about his struggle when he had his awakening. So it's kind of cathartic too. So that's pretty much it.
No, it's all, it's always interesting to hear about other people's awakenings and how they get there. And it's like a little map, like a journey. And so I'm always along for the ride for a good story.
Well, I think it's always interesting. I think you can tell a lot about a person in the liberty movement when you hear their conversion story, And
everybody's got their own. Absolutely unique.
And that leads me kind of to the next step. Our third goal, really, that we're going to talk about is, what we are most passionate about in this movement.
Foreign policy. What are we doing overseas? Like the stories you were just relaying about the people you grew up knowing. It's just horrific to hear about that. And everybody here is removed from that. And I think a lot of that is like purposefully constructed as such. So we don't have the draft anymore. It's not mandatory to go over there. But where's the same outrage from the Vietnam War era when TV cameras were first over there? Oh, guess what? We're not watching those drone strikes. We're not watching that. And I think that's all a part of it. Like, why on earth would you trust anybody on TV when the mainstream media is all in bed with the military-industrial complex and those people, like Boeing sponsors these shows. Mm-hmm. How on earth could you trust these people that it benefits them for us to have our money stolen from us as individual taxpayers, then go to these people to bomb other people? And so, like, that's my biggest thing. Tax day came up, and it's just like, why would I want to pay any money to these evil overlords of ours who seriously just like cross all the T's and dot the I's to give very evil people money, whether they're foreign or domestic, So I think that's probably my biggest, most passionate thing, that like if anybody wants to get me started on something small and minute, like I said, what being introduced to these ideas has given me is that outrage meter. So my outrage it kind of keeps me calm and level-headed, and my demeanor pretty generally okay. Like, nobody knows my opinion most of the time unless they really ask, unless you really want to know. because chances are I'll probably divert your attention to something that matters more, like, why are we killing brown people in other countries?
Right. Agreed. And that's kind of my thing too, in a way, but more on the domestic end. Like, I feel like we as a nation, we care a lot about race, probably too much, a little bit about race. Like, we think that if we're born a certain color, like, we're just going to have a really horrible life and nothing good will ever happen to us. And if you're born with a lighter shade of skin, you have all this privilege that you just need to acknowledge and you need to, apologize for constantly. And, it kind of goes to gender too. If you're a white male, you obviously have everything great and you need to just sit back and, apologize all the time for being something that you were born with and had no control over. And I feel like in this country, we have a lot more opportunity than, like I said, I've been to the Middle East and I've been to India. I've seen countries where people, the countries where, they're pretty homogenous in race and they live a lot worse lifestyle than we do, especially in India, where the government is very hyper regulated there and you have to basically fill out 30 forms just to, start a business over there. They don't have clean drinking water. There are people that literally live on the side of the road. It's not an uncommon occurrence for children to get hit by cars all the time because nobody, even though they have rules of speed and how to stop and all that stuff, nobody follows it. The bottom line being that we actually live a pretty good life in this country, regardless of whatever race you are. The poorest people in this country still probably live at the top 1% in certain areas of India. So I'm like you, I just kind of look at people sometimes and I'm just like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I can't relate to that because I've seen it completely differently. And I think that most people, they don't get out of the country. They don't get to see a third world country and they don't understand what they're complaining about. So that's my passion really. Is the thing about the voluntary movement, I think, is that it's something that can help everybody. Once we start adopting that and thinking like that, like, first off, you're not a victim. Second off, the color of your skin does not dictate your lifestyle or what you're going to go through. That's all individual. It depends on you. And once we can get that message across to everybody, I think that, I actually think that we could have a much better society. That's how I see it, When we all stop trying to blame everybody else or feel like a victim all the time, we actually can contribute back to our society in a more positive way. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Definitely. And I'm happy to remind anybody of any color that they are important. It's not the superficial, you are important, you matter, Black Lives Matter. Yes, they do. So actually treat each and every one of those individual Black people as the respected individual that they should be.
Right.
I'm a humanist first. I am so in awe with the human race and human life forms. There's plenty of people I don't like, plenty of things I wish people wouldn't do, but, at the end of the day, I'm pro-human.
Right.
And that makes me able to accept other people, the ones who don't look like me, who don't live like me, who probably don't even like me. As a Christian, I'm supposed to love everybody, and it's a difficult concept, but I think that's the compassion. Some people might have fake compassion or they virtue signal that they have compassion, but it's is how honest of compassion is that? So
right.
Well, it takes a lot of energy, so you got to be. That's why I keep my outrage meter in check. If I'm going to be able to share that love and compassion to other people, I have to be able to keep things in perspective and remember what matters to individual humans.
Well, and I think that's the key is, just the bottom line is at the end of the day, we all have our own individual life experiences. It doesn't matter, what the color of your skin is or where you were born or what religion you grew up with or any of that stuff. You wake up in your bed and you go to sleep in your bed every night and you have memories of your day that are unique to you. So it's all going to have to come back to, Are you going to take control of your life and do something with that? Or are you going to sit back and just hope that somebody else does something you want them to do to make your life better? I personally would prefer to take control of that myself and control that myself. It doesn't do good to sit around and wait and hope that maybe society will change so that I can finally have free healthcare, or I don't know, that people will stop being so racist, whatever that means. That's such a broad, and it's just an abstract concept that you can't control. Just worry about what you can control. That's it. You know?
I would say so.
The only person you have control over is yourself.
Amen, sister. I feel like that's a good note to wrap it on, you know? Like, here we are just starting out. Two gals, a couple microphones. We've got a disclaimer. I've got 2 cats, so there's that.
And I have 2 children and a cat.
And a cat.
And a husband. So, yeah, I think... you know, when in future episodes, we'll talk more about news, things that are going on in the news, and we'll kind of relate that back to the liberty movement. So we may talk about some articles that we've found interesting throughout the week.
Or maybe that other people brought to our attention that they'd like us to talk about as well.
Yep, that's a good idea.
But open to ideas, open to thinking differently, always open for a good conversation. And, you know, I think that's what we're here to do.
Well, we're going to end it here, so...
Keep it voluntary, keep it peaceful. I'm here to have fun with you, Jesse.
All right. Well, thank you, and we'll end it here. Bye.
Bye.